Welcome to Season 5 of the Banderpod, the pulchritudinous publishing podcast of Bandersnatch Books. Isn't that a great word? Pulchritudinous. We're a small press publisher of treasures found off the beaten path for lovers of all that is good, true, and beautiful. I'm Rachel Donahue, and friends, I am excited about the lineup of guests we have for this season. Today, I'm chatting with author Ben Palpant, who is a poet, memoirist, and storyteller, and our first return guest on the podcast. You may remember our interview from Season 3 when we discussed his book, An Axe for the Frozen Sea, Conversations with Poets About What Matters Most. During that delightful conversation, he mentioned his work on a storybook called Brightwing Tales. So we asked him back on the podcast to talk to us about his fiction writing. So without further ado, Ben Palpant, welcome back to the Banderpod.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so honored and excited to be with my friend Rachel.
Well, it's really, really good to have you back. All right, to get us started, why don't you give like a 30-second elevator pitch for Brightwing Tales?
There's really nothing like asking an author to give an elevator pitch for their book they love so much. Okay, here it goes. Brightwing Tales started at my kitchen sink, actually. My daughter asked me one day if I'd ever thought about writing fiction about our property, which is 10 acres out in the country, that we named Brightwing after Gerard Manley Hopkins' poem God's Grandeur. At the very end, he says, after saying the whole world is broken and soiled, and yet the Holy Spirit broods over this earth with bright wing. But immediately, upon her asking me that question, I had two fully formed characters. One was a mole in a robe and slippers with a pipe, and the other was a rabbit dressed for snow, full winter gear, and they just came unbidden. So I was shocked by that. That's never really happened to me, and I thought I need to figure out who these characters are, and that became Brightwing Tales 1, which was released last year. It's really, my desire was to bring back the stories that formed me so much, Wind in the Willows and Watership Down and Narnia, to have that same tender, intimate relationship with these characters. But that story revolves around Mole, who runs out of pipe tobacco and has to go visit Rabbit to get supplies. And it's a misadventure he didn't plan on, and it changes his life. And I comment that most misadventures choose us, we don't choose them. So that was Brightwing Tales 1, and then Brightwing Tales 2 comes out May 1st, and that is about a very proper little mouse named Acorn who wears a bow tie, not because he wants to be showy, but because he just feels so good wearing a bow tie. And he greets people with salutations and top of the morning. And his best friend is named Bear, who is an absolute slob, eats hot dogs, soda, pizza from campgrounds. And Bear is a very forlorn lover. He's fallen in love with She-Bear, who lives up on the ridgeline, but he will never get She-Bear. So he decides that he's going to leave Brightwing. He just can't handle being a forlorn lover, and Acorn, being a loyal friend, rides on top of his head, and that's one of his favorite things, is to ride on Bear's head. And they leave Brightwing, and the misadventure changes them, and there's a search party that goes after them of friends from Brightwing. And I think what's surprised me a little bit is that I wrote this without a demographic truly in mind. I wrote it for kids that I know, and it has transcended demographics. So I don't really know how to say it's for this age, really, because the feedback coming back is that I have parents who are just moved to tears by it. World Magazine reviewed Brightwing 1, and it's probably one of my favorite reviews of any of my books. She said that her daughter came into the room and found her crying and said, "Mommy, are you okay?" And she said, "Oh, honey, these are happy tears. These are gospel tears."
Oh, I love that.
I had a kid tell me he's read this 5 times in the last 7 months. And this was a boy who doesn't really love reading, so I was very honored for that. But I think what they're finding is that it's not like it's simply an adventure with high risk. But they find such an intimate tone with the characters that the story carries them along, but they really fall in love with the characters.
Yeah. Oh, that's high praise. Very high praise. When you can hook someone who doesn't consider themselves a reader and get them reading, like that is high praise indeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really interesting because you've written a lot of poetry up to this point and memoirs. And how many books have you published before Brightwing?
I think there are 7.
Okay.
But
All right.
two poetry, a memoir, and then 3 nonfiction. So you're right.
Okay.
There's a variety out there.
Yeah, so there's a variety. And then this was your first foray into fiction. So you've already talked about kind of the seed of the idea, like from your daughter, and just this compulsion, like, I have to follow this. How did you find the skills and the confidence to make that leap into a new genre of writing?
Yeah. Well, honestly, even though the books have been published later, I have really been writing fiction for years. I just never had the courage to put it out there. I don't know if it's courage, actually. I didn't feel like I was ready. So for me, honestly, writing fiction is the most natural thing in the world. It really is much harder for me to write nonfiction. I started with my memoir. That was such a meaningful book for so many people that I had what really many authors struggle with, that the sophomore project becomes a high pressure kind of thing, and I didn't know what to do. So a friend said, you should try writing poetry. It's so different. And so I did, and I loved that so much. So maybe I just have attention deficit disorder. I don't know. But I do not want to be dictated to by my work on who I will be, and I don't want to be imprisoned by something people love so much. I want my life to be a variety of things. So really, fiction has been going all along, and I would say this is no insult to the other work, but I would say all of that work has been preparation for Brightwing Tales.
Yeah, I think I've heard you say that before, that like everything that we're doing is preparation for something else or the next thing. And I have seen that pattern. Like there's something very true about that we're always a work in progress.
Yeah.
In a sense.
And I think as long as we're doing our caring about that craft work. But here's the thing for me anyways, Rachel, that the project has to have my full attention, and I can't think of this as just a stepping stone to something else. And I think that's one of the dangers of platform thinking, that I've got to create a platform rather than saying, no, I'm going to create something really good and then let God multiply that how he wants to. And that's not to say we can't utilize the tools out there for that. But if I start thinking, well, this is just practice for something else, then I won't give it its full due, and I will not maximize my skills that God's given me.
Right.
So I think that's one of the joys of the work of writing. If you don't enjoy writing itself and you just want your name on a book, it's probably not what you should be doing.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned that you don't want to be defined by any one thing, any one genre, that this is what your work has to be. And I really relate to that. I think there's something about the joy of getting to dabble in different things, and I don't know, the different forms of expression of poetry versus fiction versus just a well-crafted essay. There are things that need to be communicated that don't always find a good outlet in one of those forms, and sometimes one of those things will carry over into the other. And I think probably your habits as a poet probably play into how you write as a fiction writer as well, kind of the cadence of language and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was in an interview with Bono, for the singer for U2, that he said, your best work sooner or later becomes your mother and father telling you what to say when and what even to wear. And he said, you do not want that. So that's partly why U2 jettisons their previous work, when you're going, you just had something, so you nailed it, and now you're changing genres or you're changing style. And I think that that's sort of a self-protection against that thing that imprisons us.
Yeah, I like that. There's so many considerations for someone who is really trying to market their work. when you have a marketing mindset, it is about building a brand and a platform and giving people things consistently, you know, a consistent look, a consistent brand. And I mean, that's just not how we're wired to be as humans. You know, we grow and we change, and we should have room to grow and change.
Yeah, here's a confession for you, Rachel. So Axe for the Frozen Sea came out a year ago ish, and that feels like a long time ago, honestly. I know that people are reading it now, present tense. And that's one of the beauties of being a writer. This is hitting them at this present moment when God brought this to them when they need it. But for me, that was a long time ago. And the other thing that, confession, I don't count myself a poet. I did those interviews so that I would think more poetically about things. And it really was so that I would be a better writer on whatever I put my hand to. So I think talking though to those poets helps me as an essayist and as a fiction writer. So really, I think they feed. You're commenting on this earlier. They feed each other in such important ways. And if I just decided to be a poet or an essayist or a fiction writer, I don't know that I'll be as good in any of those categories unless I'm doing all of them.
And even with what you were saying about that seems so long ago. We just released I've Got a Bad Case of Poetry,
right,
which was kind of my pet project. But it was something that I was immersed in for 2 years. And it kind of consumed my creative space for most of that time. And yet it was fairly solitary. I mean, I was working with Emily, but, you know, like other people weren't getting to enjoy it with me. And now that people are starting to get to enjoy it, I'm on to something else. Like I'm in the middle of a different project. And so I can get that. Like, you know, when people are excited about it, it's like step into that moment and remember what it is and delight in that. But also like, I don't know, that was something that surprised me about the writing life is that, yeah, it's almost like yesterday's news, but it's not. It's this is what people are currently enjoying.
Oh, totally. It's a bit of a sanctuary. You have to treat that room as its own place. And then you go in there and work on it, but knowing that nobody else knows that that's what's happening. And that's the way it's meant to be. I think it's great.
Mm-hmm. So with my current project, I actually have more community around what I'm working on right now. And that feels really good to have people in that space kind of help shaping the work as it's going. Talk about what community looks like for you in your creative process.
I love working with artists for illustration. I love working with videographers and doing things together. I am horrible at working with writing groups or that kind of a community. So what you describe, I think it's great for a lot of people. I tend to be a little more monkish. So when I talk about my work, I have a very small group of people that I will send, you know, an opening couple of chapters to. In fact, for me, there is a sense in which possibly my ego is at play when I'm working with other writers. So Christians are the only place that I've found the competition tends to go away when you have Christian writing groups, and I love that. And I think that's especially true of our circles where people are just trying to encourage each other to adorn the dark.
Yeah.
But I do find that in myself, because I'm such an egomaniac, that if I'm with other people and their work, I find I'm so impressed by them that I find myself saying, well, golly, you should do that, and I should go plant beans or something. But I know that that's not how God made us. I know that he made me to write.
Right.
I just have to write what I was made to write, and I can't try to be somebody else. I think there is a sense in which early on in my career I tried to imitate, and that's actually the way we're meant to be.
Yeah.
You know, I think kids should try to imitate their favorite authors. But as I've grown into my capacities, that's required that I just go into that room and get to work. I know my instincts at this point. I know when I'm posing or when I'm trying to be impressive in my writing or sound intellectual or whatever. And really my best work is when I can just close the door and honestly write for the little boy inside me. And that's true of poetry and nonfiction too. If I can write for that boy, then it tends to have a greater appeal.
Yeah. No, that's true. Was it Robert Frost who said, no surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader?
Yeah. So I was in Chicago last week recording the audiobook for Brightwing Tales 2 so this is going back to having compartments. I'm recording the audiobook for Brightwing Tales 2, but I'm also working on this entirely different story for Brightwing Tales 1.5, I suppose. And so I knew I was on deadline for that and needed to have it back to them soon. And so on the flight back, I knew I was down to my last 2 chapters. Thankfully, there was nobody in the seat next to me and nobody across the aisle. And it was a late night flight. So airplane time has crushed the writing time for me. So I was working on this story and I had enough of it going that I really wasn't making authorial decisions. It felt like I was being dictated to a little bit. And that's when I know that I've got something. But here's the surprise. When Grandsire Rabbit comes to his house and the house is quiet, he's afraid that all of his little pups have been taken by the dog Midnight. And so he throws open the door and they're all huddled around their mom. Now, the story that I'm telling is transformative. When he leaves the house, he's just a dad who's really tired of all the kids nagging and tugging on his pant leg, and he's got so many dishes, he doesn't even know if he'll ever finish the dishes. So he just goes out for a quiet time in the snow, which is one of my favorite aspects of Brightwing Tales. All the misadventure and all of the crisis starts with really mundane decisions. So he just wants quiet for himself, and then it leads to this horrific encounter with Midnight, the dog. But when he gets back, and he has a patch over his eye, and he's got a staff, and he's this warrior-like figure, his pups don't recognize him. And so they're all huddled around Mumsy, and she's comforting them. And it says, I know I wrote this, but it just came out, that there was really a second of time between the moment Mumsy saw her husband and when the pups turned and looked. And in that moment, more was said about love and all its complexity than could ever be said in all the books of the world. And then he says, "Where are all my scallywags?" And one of the pups one of his little rabbits recognizes his voice and starts thumping her foot on the ground and doesn't know what to say. But there's such an expression of love that burst out of this little rabbit, and she goes running to her dad that I audibly sobbed on the airplane. I was so surprised at what she said and so moved by it that I started crying, and I was so thankful there was nobody around and they all had their ear pods in, and it was so embarrassing to me. But I thought, that is so lovely that God would be kind enough to give me the work that surprises myself emotionally. What a great gift. My goodness. So then I gave it to my editor, and she was moved as well, which is a great sign. If I can move a grammarian, then that means I've done my job.
I love it. Yeah, isn't it amazing that so much of writing is discovery? I mean, really so much of it just feels like a gift, like you're just digging for treasure.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think that one of the privileges of being a writer who follows Christ is that I know who to thank for that inspiration.
Yeah.
I know that the Holy Spirit is at work in my life. And so when things feel like they're coming from outside myself, which is a lot, it's a humbling moment, but it's also ripe for gratitude to just say, Lord, thank you for this gift I'm just going to steward it the best way I can. Please help me to do that.
Yeah.
But I love that I can name who's behind the scenes, and I'm not just wondering if it's the muse or...
Yeah. Yeah. It's a muse we can talk to and we can ask questions of. We can ask wisdom of. And it really is just incredible. There's such
I don't know if this is true for you, Rachel, but I often, when I'm writing, I'll lay down at night. It's actually one of the best things for me is when I'm working in the middle of a book that I don't have all figured out. When I lay my head on the pillow, I pray to the Lord and I ask him questions. What does this character really want deepest down? Mm-hmm. And often I'll wake up in the morning or in the middle of the night and I'll go, well, there it is. So it's no longer, when I was younger, I would wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh my word, it's 2 a.m. What am I going to do? Now I wake up at 2 a.m. and I think, oh, well, I'm supposed to be awake working on this project.
Yep.
So here we go.
I'm so there. The number of times that those little epiphanies come in the middle of the night. And there's and such a clarity too. There's something very unique about that 2 a.m., 3 a.m. hour that just brings clarity. And not that it's healthy to be awake at that hour most nights, but on the nights that I do find myself awake and like mentally awake, try to steward that time. All right, so let's talk about the process of bringing Brightwing Tales from this idea you had that you've only shared with a friend or two to it being a book. That's a whole process. What did that look like? Were there people involved in the process who were patrons of your work, who shaped what it became?
Oh, absolutely. I know that I have a handful of patrons who make it possible for me to focus on the patient, slow work of the writing and focus on relationships rather than focusing on platform building. And that's really important for the tone of my work. So if I'm going to protect it, and I would say that of all my writing, if I get too caught up in trying to build this as a business, I think I might lose some of that tone. Although there's a part of the writing life requires me to have a business side of.
Sure.
So there's nothing wrong with that. But yes, I have patrons, a handful of patrons. And so I wrote the manuscript and then I work at a classical school. So I have second graders who are, for me, second grade is this golden age. So at least in my experience, second graders are at this perfect age where they will tell you exactly what they think. But if they are telling you something that you don't really want to hear, like, boy, this story is not really very good, it's not because they're being rude. It's just unfiltered affection and they want to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, if they tell you they love it, they really do mean it. So I find that second grade, they haven't quite reached the spot where they know how to flatter their elders. Anyway, so I asked our second grade teachers if I could read Brightwing to them, Brightwing 1. Mm-hmm. And I was super nervous reading in front of these second graders. And their response was so visceral and so loyal, it actually frightened me a little bit because I thought, well, this is just a story. You shouldn't be so caught up in it. But they were really, really moved. That's one of my favorite things. And I think that's been true for the kids who pick it up. They just carry it around and they carry it to bed. And I love that. Yeah. So that's the process. So yes, there's an editorial team. I'm shallow enough that I judge books by their cover. And I know that kids, when I was a kid, I did that. So let's make something beautiful for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Something, well, you have done that. It's beautiful. Outside and inside, like the whole thing. It's a delight.
Good.
So where can people find your books?
Rabbit Room Press has Brightwing Tales 1, and if you want to pre-order Brightwing Tales 2, that's Amazon would probably be the best place for that. Okay. That'll be out on May 1st. The audiobook will be released at the same time.
All right.
So, yeah, that would be great. And if they want to explore more, benpalpant.com, that's where they can go for that.
Very good. All right, so before we get to kind of our popcorn questions at the end, I know you've got something in the works called the Brightwing Society. Talk to us about that. What is this and what's it going to look like? What are your hopes for it?
Yeah. Well, God has been so kind to give me lots of relationships with artists and filmmakers and songwriters and fiction writers all over the world. And so one of the things I found in talking to them and praying for them is this common theme that they feel like they're working in a silo. They don't feel seen, I suppose. And that's not because their work isn't selling. It's just the artistry of any kind. There's a level of feeling like you're working in your own silo and you don't realize that there are people all over the world who feel the same way and who love the Lord. So I thought, what could I do, Lord, that would encourage these folks? And so I decided that we would create underground movement that wasn't enamored by numbers necessarily or visibility. I didn't want this to become a networking thing or something that would, push artists, their platform forward. I think those are all important. But what could I do to just encourage those artists all over the world? So I founded the Brightwing Society. That will also be on my website, benpalpant.com, here in probably mid-March. We'll be ready. And that just allows people to become members of a community that will receive gentle encouragement along the way. So whether that's we're very young, so we're still trying to figure out how to do this well. But I think we get so much junk mail, and that includes my inbox. Mm-hmm. So wouldn't it be fun to get something that is authentic, handmade little envelope in your mailbox that just said, hey, with a note inside that said, whether there's an article. I think that would be such an encouragement to a lot of people. And I don't know what the Lord has in store, but I do know that these relationships, like my writing, are worth stewarding. And I think there's a real movement in the church for the arts. And so that's why I think there are so many ways, overlapping ways, that we can encourage the arts. Rabbit Room is one of those, right? Square Halo is another. What you are doing is another. But those are different than what Brightwing Society would do. And I love that there are all these ways to encourage one another. They feed one another, and the Lord will use them however he's going to use them. So I'm excited to see what the Lord does, but I just want to keep encouraging a community of people, whatever they're doing. Even we have florists who want to be a part of this, right? So let's just do that and keep encouraging each other to do the good work.
Yeah. I love that. It is amazing with all of these different creative communities, there's overlap, but each one is kind of doing a slightly different thing. And then all together, like, we are expanding the encouragement and the light. Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that.
I think that's the way the church is meant to function, really.
Yeah.
Even if I would think in terms of denominations and different pastors, different ways of attending to something that's so huge, right? It's so huge that surely we can serve one another by pointing at different parts of this huge thing in a way that's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. The many parts, the one body working together toward the same ends. Yeah. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. All right. So let's get to our popcorn questions.
I'm super nervous about this, by the way.
Don't be. There are no wrong answers.
Well, we'll find out, I guess.
All right. What's a smell that takes you back to your childhood?
Oh, my goodness. Anytime I'm near a river or a stream. I grew up on a river, and so I would wake up in the morning, and to survive junior high, I would go wade out into the river and go fishing at dark 30. So for me, if I get anywhere near water, man, I feel like my best self.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. I don't think many people can say that that's how they spent junior high.
No, I feel really lucky. Honestly, with, when I get up to speak in front of people, or I'm on a podcast, or I have a name on a book, I still have to adjust because I'm still feel like a country boy. So still feel like that barefoot boy who would prefer to be out fishing.
All right. If you could instantly learn any language, which one would it be and why?
French. French would be the language because I find it so beautiful. When I hear people speak in French, I think, wow, that is lovely. And the second reason is that I have a deep history with my own family. Palpant is how you say my name in French. And the Palpants go way back in our Huguenot history. So I would love to be able to learn that language. I just have been too lazy, I guess. No.
It takes quite an effort. I mean, honestly, immersion is the best way, but we can't all
do that. I could move to France. I would not necessarily mind that. Let's figure a way to do that.
All right, move to France. There we go. Your next assignment. Okay, where is your favorite bookish place?
Okay, well, this is maybe cheating a little bit, but our property, our 10 acres that we named Brightwing, it has rolling wheat fields that drop into a swale of tall grass. It's in summertime, it'll get up to my waist or higher. And then there's a creek that's fed by springs that goes into a forest at the back end of it. So everything I described in Brightwing Tales is real. It's a real place. But I know there aren't a lot of books there, but that is my favorite bookish place because I'm free to just be in nature. There aren't any distractions. And when I take my book, I can lie down in the grass and look up at the sky and roll over on my belly and read. And the birds are playing in the grass next to me. And that's my favorite kind of reading right there.
I love it. I love it. That reminds me of when I was in college out in the garden area. I'd take a blanket out there and just sit and do all my reading and studying. And yeah, it's delightful. All right. Last question. If you could forget the entire plot of one book just so you'd have the chance to read it for the first time again, which book would you choose?
That is a great question. Not that the others weren't great, too. Okay, I'm going to take two books just to cheat, and they will be on the polar opposite books. But the first would probably be East of Eden by Steinbeck. Such a weighty book and such a incredible depiction of the corruption of the human heart, but at the same time, and especially from a Steinbeck who didn't really taste the grace of God that I know of, at least in his life, an incredible depiction of grace, of God's hands working through just regular people. So I think that book's an incredible work. And then maybe the other one would be Winnie the Pooh, opposite end of things, but golly, that's just so masterful. And honestly, Winnie the Pooh, I went back and read Winnie the Pooh after writing Brightwing Tales, and I thought to myself, that book, those books, Winnie the Pooh is clearly in the leaf mold of my mind, as Tolkien said, and it came out in Brightwing Tales, because there's just so many similarities, but those books are masterful.
They are. They are a complete delight, especially when read aloud with children.
Or read aloud to myself, who I am a child, so.
That's right. That's right. We still carry those children within us.
Yep.
That is for sure. Well, Ben, this has been a delight. Thank you so much for joining us on the Vanderpod today.
It's been a delight on my part. I'm so honored, and I love conversations with you. They're rich and beautiful, and anytime you're out my direction, we'll have you out to Brightwing.
Oh, that sounds lovely. We'll definitely take you up on it. All right, listeners, thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned for more wonderful conversations this season. And in the meantime, may you find bookish treasures in your wanderings off the beaten path. Thanks for listening in to our conversation today on the Vanderpod. We hope you'll check out our full catalog at bandersnatchbooks.com. The Vanderpod is produced by Rachel S. Donahue, A.B. Donahue, and Carolyn Claire Givens. Audio engineering by SDG Morgan. Artwork by Evelyn Warnamundi. Many thanks to our friend Chris Slayton of Son of Laughter for our theme song, Cricket in a Jar. Find links and more in the show notes.